So we are spiritual beings, human beings, which is the same thing, in a body. Our thinking creates a real world or reality or physical substance. And we are connected to other human beings and also to the artificial matrix world that we are plonked into, shall we say. Now, I shall just wait for the plane to go overhead. Now, in my videos, it's all a fantasy. It's all whether you want to enter into the fantasy when I make the video, or whether you step back and say it's an interesting story, or whether you think there's some reality to it. There's always reality to all tales anyway. There always has to be some truth or some reality to every story, regardless of whether it's fiction or non-fiction, because unless you incorporate some truth or some reality into a story or even into your reality, no one's going to be even interested to listen. Once something gets too past my perception or what I think to even be remotely possible, even as a fairy tale, even as a fantasy, even as an illusion, even as a joke, even as a non-reality in every way, once it gets too past it, no one will entertain it at all. Because you won't be able to even follow it. So there has to be some reality, or what we think is reality, always incorporated into everything. This is the confusion of the world we live in that sense, because I don't separate fantasy from fact or fantasy from reality in any way. But that's just me. Okay, so, to me it's all the same. Because I think it's only how you think about things anyway. It's the human thinking that really determines. I can't go into another person's mind. They can't go into mine. Correction there. See, already I have forgot about the matrix. Just in my simple statement, I have already gone back into a false reality, gone back into the old world, to where I think that I'm a real human being, that I think I'm in a real natural world, to where I think that everything is relatively under my physical control with my physical body, you see. Hey, I don't know why I make these videos. I really don't. Because it is almost impossible to incorporate the unreality into reality in a video. Because you're using a physical limited device, and I am limited myself at the present time, and have been since the day I came into this world. Now, I'm losing myself and you already, I can tell. And I know that I'm losing myself, which is why I'm laughing, because it becomes a joke even trying to explain the fantasy or the reality or anything connected with this world now. Because, yes, as I've said before, the difficulty in when you say everything is a fantasy, as I do, and everything is a potential reality and everything is a possibility, The difficulty is in seeing the choices and knowing which one is the real deal, shall we say. Assuming there is a real deal. Some people might say, well, maybe there isn't a real deal. Because a lot of people say it's only what you perceive. I don't actually believe that myself, even though I live in a fantasy world. Of course, as our thinking does create reality, that is another thorn in the side, or another, what's the word, another thing to confuse the situation. You see, everything is a confusion if you really think about it. And if you think about it, then it becomes more confusing. But actually, it's not in a way, if you do like I try to do. Of course, I'm not spot on and I'm way off and it's all a fantasy and it's just a big mystery and it's all made up, okay? But it doesn't change the reality that I like to keep it simple. And you have to, really, because you can only look at one thing at a time, as we all know. So even if you have 3 possibilities, I always go with 3. Because once you get past a certain number of possibilities, you're only confusing yourself. You have to say there are 3 potentials always, or something like that, or even 2 if you can do it. The less the better. At least that's for me anyway. I'm not going to pretend that I'm some, you see the Matrix. And this is just coming to me as I go along. And it's already gone to the Matrix. See, I was going to make the video an hour ago. So the Matrix got the best and you get the worst. And that is unfortunate. Those that I talk to at the end of this video get the worst, the Matrix gets the best of me. Because it gets the coherent thoughts. And also it gets and can use whatever I think or say to even more ability. It can twist it to its own fairy tale and its own story, because we live in a world where there are many fairy tales, many perceptions of reality. There's the Matrix version of reality, which is presented to most people. The Matrix is the world we live in. The so-called real, natural Earth. The so-called world where we have input and we can manipulate. No, it's not like that. Not in my perception of it, or not in my way of looking. It's not a perception. I believe it to be a reality, but it is a fantasy for many others. It is not real to many people. I do not think what most people see is real. That is just because you're coming from a different way of looking at things. And as I've said before, there is always at least a couple of ways of looking at everything. I try to look at the couple of ways, but I will decide on one that I think is the cold, hard reality, shall we say. As I said, many people might say, well, there is really none. It could be any one of those. Because you're the thinker, you're the creator of the reality. But no, you're not, because you do not control your thinking. You see. This is the difficulty, is to have to realise that you're in a world where you are the controlled, not the controller. You are not really the creator. Your thinking is not going to create your reality. Your thinking is for the Matrix. The Matrix will take your thinking and create the reality it wants you to see and what most will see. That is how it works. You may as well be, a cockroach in this reality. And you are. And you can be stamped on at any time. But while you're a productive little cockroach and you're thinking hard like me, thinking before to make the video, I got to say this, I got to point out that. Of course, I was going to make the video on a movie called The Innocents, which I would advise you to have a look at before I even make the video. But then again, I will be boring after you've seen it because you'll probably get more out of it. But I still say watch the Innocents movie, because even if you believe in nothing at all and you just enjoy The Matrix and enjoy a movie or a video, it is still a very good film. Okay? You know, I would have thought it was a good film before I became aware of The Matrix. I would have still put it up there as a very good horror movie. In fact, I wouldn't class it as a horror movie. I would call it a reality movie, but that is how you look at it. But in its genre, it's a horror supernatural movie. Okay. But anyway, I will talk about that in another video probably, because I want to talk about it on and on and on. Only because although I see it as a simple film with a simple theme, and I have now looked at it 6 times in the last month, and will look at it again probably if I have the time, which I will find the time, because although it is boring to watch the same movie over and over again, to where you almost know most of the dialogue, you know, I still know that and realise that I'm a limited human being in this matrix reality. So therefore, if I think I've got it all, I know I haven't. And you get that little thing that you're missing something. You know you haven't got the whole story. You know you've got 3/4, but you know you haven't got the whole story. So that's why I keep watching. Fortunately, if you like something, it's not so hard. But it's harder to watch a movie that you actually don't, that doesn't suit the matrix influence that has been put onto you over a lifetime. So I'm conditioned by the matrix too. So when I watch movies, I like certain movies of certain periods. I like a black and white movie, for instance. So of course I like colour too, but you know, like I will favour certain movies. So therefore I could learn more from maybe another movie, you know, because I will watch other movies. But as I've said before, because I favour certain ones, I will get more out of the ones that I favour, even if they're not as good a movie or have less to say, only because I'll focus more, because I'm able to enjoy it more, because I've been conditioned and controlled and influenced and manoeuvred by the matrix over a lifetime. Whether this is good or bad, I'm not giving myself very much credit here, am I? No, because I'm not going to give human beings any credit in this reality, or I'm not going to give myself, a human being, any credit in this reality. You know, there may be others that have passed my low level, so in which case I'm not referring to them, but I don't know who or what they are. I have not seen many, I have to admit, but then again, you know, if you're in this reality, many people are of the matrix. They like the matrix, they work for the matrix, they're the matrix disciples, they're the matrix followers. They believe in the matrix, they believe in the matrix God and this world. In other words, if you believe in anything of this world or this earth, you are of the matrix, you are of the earth, not the real natural earth, no. In my fantasy, that's long gone. That does not exist. If it ever did. I assume it did. And naturally I long for it, but it is long gone. It's a dream. Most people say, well, no, what you say is a dream. Well, that's all, everything. We live in a reverse world, so take it whichever way you like. But we live in a reverse world. Can't emphasize that enough. Everything is the reverse of what is normal. Some people might say, well, we don't like it normal. We like it different. We like it unusual. Well, we like it individual. Well, that is your delusion. That is the matrix telling you that. Nothing is not of the matrix. If you think you're an individual human being, you can't be. You can't be. How can you be when you're not in the correct environment? You would need to be above the God entity. You would need to be a God to be able to do that. You're not a God in a matrix reality. You can't be. Because you're at your lowest level. Whatever potential you have is not there. It's gone. It's suppressed. It's taken from you. Even if it was there, you wouldn't know how to ignite it. You don't have the key to your own potential, to your own limitlessness. Limitlessness. Oh, goodness gracious. But that is a bad thing to say too, because then that makes, that is part of the delusion of the matrix too, that you can now be whatever you want, that you can create your own reality, you see. So what I'm trying to say is it's just one mad maze matrix. And even words are useless. Everything is useless in the matrix because the matrix has the upper hand. The matrix has total mind control. You say, well, you're sitting there, you're talking about it. Maybe it doesn't have mind control over you. Oh, yes, it does. The minute you think you have got the upper hand on the matrix, the minute you think you are holding any cards, like I say, you can't play poker, as I've said in other videos, with a player that already knows all your cards and knows your thoughts about how you're going to play those cards. You cannot presume or assume or think that you have any control over your reality. You only have a little bit of choice left. That's about it. If you think about it seriously, if you take this fantasy or this reality seriously, and if you are playing it serious, or trying to avoid being outplayed, or just trying to not throw your hand in, shall we say, like you do in a card game. Sometimes you're like, hey, I ain't got the cards. I know that everyone else has got better than me. It's such a poor hand, I'm going to throw my hand in. Well, I for one am trying not to throw my hand in despite having a poor hand. But either way, I'm just being fancy here and being airy-fairy, and I think the word's esoteric, which sounds good. Words will be used by the matrix too, because words are human communication. Everything is used by the matrix, make no mistake about it. You do not have any advantages whatsoever, because the matrix now is in full swing. The matrix has total dominion over the earth, even though the earth is already a matrix anyway. Matrix, like from the movie The Matrix. Matrix, what is the matrix, they say in the movie? Matrix is control. If you are of the mind that a human being should have control over their own life to some extent, and over their destiny to some extent, and over even to their actions, and have the privacy of their own thoughts, well, then you are in the wrong reality. I'm not sure what happened to that reality. I only know that I lost it, or it was taken from me. Was it taken from me consensually? Probably. But I do not remember consenting, and I know that I would not have consented. Maybe I didn't consent as much as most people, and maybe the reason the matrix is even stronger for some of us is because maybe we didn't openly consent to the matrix. But the reality that the matrix exists and is in full swing and has full dominion tells me that I consented indirectly. Obviously, now being overtly aware of the matrix, I am not happy with the reality. But then again, I've been unhappy most of my life anyway. But before it was mild depression, now it is vast rage and unhappiness. And that is not good either. Because like I say, if you realise that you're in a frequency reality, see, I'm laughing because you can't win. That's why I'm laughing, because it's like the situation is hopeless but not serious, as that movie was called, that old movie. And this is the reality, because you're in a frequency battle, because a human being is the control frequency of the matrix, So if you are angry and enraged, like I have just said, then, you are allowing the matrix more power. So this is kind of how it works. So it is a multi kind of, if you want to look at it that way, it is a multi assault on the mind of the human, because the mind of the human is the matrix. Of course, it is not the matrix in the sense that the matrix is controlled by its members, its followers, its disciples, those that follow the matrix God, those that follow the earth. But I lost myself there again. Sorry, went off track. But the human mind is still the essential component of the matrix, the source, the energy, everything about the human is what makes the matrix tick, and what makes the matrix alive, because it is only a human being that is alive. The matrix is dead. The matrix comes alive through the human being. The matrix God is a technological being. Technology is not alive. You would say, well, that can't be true. It's real. It's smarter than you. It is more creative than you. It is more interesting than you. It is more advanced than you. It can do things that you cannot do. It can survive a long time. It can do all sorts of miraculous, magical things. So we see with our eyes that the matrix God is all, and that his demigods that have dominion over the matrix, or over the earth, depending on what word you want to lose. I lose myself with those things, as you can see. And I'm trying to keep it simple, but it's very hard to keep something simple that is not what you would have thought was true or what you thought was the real world, shall we say. I'm losing it here again. I'm losing it here again, everybody. I'm losing my own thinking. I'm losing the, I shouldn't make fun of these. I should delete most of these videos, to be honest. But because it is more like a conversation amongst a few people that I think understand, or at least are open to a fantasy and open to potential realities. That's what it comes down to, I suppose. A potential fantasy. Could it be true? Could there be some elements of truth in it? Could it be a future? Is it already the past? Well, that's another question. Sometimes I get impressed with myself even. This is the danger of making videos, because if you become too impressed with your own self in a matrix, then you are of the matrix. Then you are the matrix god, then you are a demigod of the matrix. Once you think that you have, once you enter into, even making a video is a negative thing. It's something I am ashamed to do. And I only do it because I think that maybe on the other end of the video there is a human. If there is not, then it is even shame even more, because everything is of the matrix, and I do not wish to fuel the matrix. But as I've said before, it can't be helped either way. So even if the videos, as shameful as they are to make a video, to use technology to make a video is a wrong thing. It is an evil, anti-life device, communication. It is of the matrix. It is not of me. It should not be of me. It is anti-life in every single way. It has no benefit. It is only destruction. But, maybe some human beings are able to turn something negative into something positive. Perhaps. I would be doubtful, because I think if you take a line and you do take a line on the reality and see it for what it is, or at least have a different belief system on it. See, there again, maybe it's just a different belief system. If my own way of looking at technology is that it is anti-life in every possible way and has no benefit in any way, then I hold to that. And look, my own thing is this too, is that, look, if there is a minuscule benefit to technology, which I have no doubt there is, because if you have a human being, a genuine human being, genuine, even that word is thrown around. I hate even using words because I see the words thrown around in the matrix. There's nothing genuine in the matrix. The only genuine thing in the matrix, if we're going to use that word, the only real thing, real is the same thing. The only living thing, the only thing that has any life in the matrix is a human being. Everything else is artificial and non-life. So most is not real. Because if you have a technological matrix with a technological God, run by technological demigods that worship the God as they should and would, because that is their life source, that is their belief, That is their reality. That is what they think is real. See, it's only a matter of what you think is real. I myself really, honestly, most of the time would have to say I don't know a lot of the time. As I've said before, when I've made these videos, all I can really say is I don't know what is the best. I don't know what is 100% real. But I know what I see to be not real and negative. That's all I really do know. So I don't know what I really should believe in. I only know what I shouldn't believe in, or what I don't like, or what I think is negative, or what I think is anti-life, what I think is destruction for myself. I'm not going to say what's destructive for you or what's a benefit to you. What is nourishment for the matrix demigods is poison for me. Because they've become different. Maybe they haven't become different, maybe they've always been different. Maybe they're they're different, almost like a different species. Different races even. As we have different races on Earth, we have different types of people, we have different Barbie dolls, we have different dolls, we have different toys, we have teddies, we have dolls, we have animals, we have elephants, we have cats, we have dogs. And now we merge them all together because we want to be one big happy family. We want to be all as one. We want to be high vibration and love and all one with the earth and with the universe. What a joke. There is no earth, there is no universe, there is no one with all, there is no universal love. It is all a fantasy, a dream, an illusion of the matrix. And of course, as a human being, at a kind of basic level, we strive for that. Most of us have lost it, including myself. And like the song goes, back to, while my guitar gently weeps, I will do this, I will go all over the place, bits and pieces of movies, bits of songs, none of it makes any sense, make of it what you will, it's just one big mishmash of, reality, illusion, delusion, confusion. It makes no sense. But look, yes, like the song, what was it? Oh dear, dear, dear. I look at you all, see the love there that's sleeping. Yes, it's dormant. But that's why we continually talk about love in a matrix that has no conception of love. A matrix God that finds human emotion as anti-life and as sickening as what I find technology. The matrix is all about survival, all about eliminating anything that gets in the way of its negative survival. It's not about growth. It's not about all the things that it projects. Everything that is projected in the matrix is from a human being. That is to keep us playing in the matrix. Like I say, you're not going to play in a matrix if you think there is no benefit to playing, if you think it is an anti-life, alien, negative, anti-human matrix. You either go away from that, step away from that and say this is just my fantasy. This is my story. This is how I feel about things. It doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean the whole thing is as bad as what I painted. It could be a lot less. On the other hand, it could be a lot worse. But that will be, like I say, I'm not saying it's for each person to decide these things. But yeah, I look at you all, and this is the Matrix demigod singing the song too, by the way, because all is of the Matrix. So there again, you have to say this is the Matrix, you see. But of course, you must remember that some of these, I'm going off onto another potential here. It's not only another potential, but it's because I always try to see both sides of things. Doesn't mean I agree with both sides. I know that the other side is in opposition to my own way of looking at things. But it's still, I just can't help but do that. And I think it's, you have to do it too to get a bit of a picture too. Because otherwise you could be easily swept back into the Matrix, you see. Because if the Matrix tells you more love and more emotion and more feeling and more genuineness and more authenticity, I heard that word the other day by a Matrix demigod, and they like to use the words. They want you to give them the words because the words have the power and the emotion, and the words can create reality. So, as you can see, and I've gone off the track, we are in one big we got one big problem, But yeah, I look at you all, see the love there that's sleeping while my guitar gently weeps. Not quite sure about the guitar gently weeping. Obviously that's some sort of loss. But maybe this song puts confusion into things because there is the confusion of the world. There is the double way of looking at things. It is a double world, But essentially, this is my own way of looking at it. Is that why does the Matrix demigod sing a human song telling the humans their faults or their mistakes or where they've gone wrong or that they have gone wrong? Why? Well, there's obviously a couple of ways of looking at that, isn't there? Do they have to? Yes. Is that a good thing for them to tell you the truth? Yes. Does it benefit them to tell you the truth? Yes. Does it protect them to tell you the truth? Yes. Does it serve them to tell you the truth? No. But if you take in line the other things that I just said, yes. Because it knows that at some point the human will grasp it. So it has to be one step ahead. The Matrix always has to be steps ahead of the human. That way it keeps the matrix. You know, you can't be ahead of a human being and be a cold-blooded killer. You know, you can't do that. Most human beings are like, I'm out of here. It's a matrix. Goodness gracious. Yes. While my guitar gently weeps while I've been sleeping, you know, no. Because human beings will know that. They're meant to be at a high vibration. So yes, of course, they're meant to be in a more loving state, shall we say. And of course, the loving state does defeat the matrix. That is why the matrix keeps the human being at low vibration. Because, you know, when I'm talking about a loving state, I'm not talking about everyone going around kissing and cuddling and all that sort of thing. I'm talking about just a state where there is not that negativity, that I can't even explain it, but you probably know what I mean. Just a neutral state, like I say, a calm state, a calm at the centre of the storm, like I said in the other thing, because we're in a storm really, you know, and we're right in the centre of it, and that calm, that kind of, is the word like animosity, fear, apprehension, suspicion, paranoia, all the things that I'm full of most of the time, because the matrix puts you in that state. Because just to go out into the world, if you are aware of the matrix, once you become aware of the matrix, then it's no holds barred, shall we say, which is understandable, because if you're playing in an unreality kind of world, a kind of game, you know, it's common sense that, you know, if there is any common sense, there again, as I've said before, the human being does have common sense, should have common sense. Common sense is just simply where you see something for what it really is. You don't let the matrix take over your thinking or your feelings or your emotions, which is the creator of the reality, to where you don't see something for what it really is clearly. Sometimes it's quite simple to just look at something and say, that is what it is. But then, like I said before, the matrix will work its magic on you, will work its mind control. It's technology, it's mind control. It's not really magic. The only real magic in the matrix is the human being, if you want to look at it that way. I'm just using words. I'm not talking about magic, playing and I'm saying that if the human beings is the centre and the source, you know, by comparison with technology, the human being is, you know, like there's no comparison between the mundane technology of the matrix and its God to the real full potential of a human being. But unfortunately, as I said before, we're right down at the lowest. We have almost no potential. We're a cockroach. And the matrix God and its technology is at using it on the source, which is the human being, for full potential, for full control of this reality. The only thing the human being has left is, at least my own way of thinking it and my own personal thing, is still to make that choice. And it won't mean that your reality will change. That is the difficulty and the sad thing, I would say. But I could be wrong. I mean, I'm not really wrong. See, it's like I said in the other video. You know, so you have to piece all these videos together, really. You have to take the whole. Don't just take one thing, I say. You have to take the whole lot and everything you know yourself as well. It's kind of like See, my own way of looking, I'm just going to say all this is just my own little reality, my own way of looking at it. So put all the onus on me if you like. So if you think it's mumbo jumbo, hocus pocus, which it all is in this reality anyway, except that most of it is of the matrix, but that's my belief too. That is my way of looking at it. That is how I see it. That's how I think it is. But it may not be how you think it is. And if you think, as I've said before, it's too hard to ignite or get the human being. See, my own personal way of looking at it is I don't care that the matrix is much more powerful. I don't care that the matrix has full control. I don't care that the matrix is vast and has everything taken and uses as a joint collective everything from the human to create a collective mind reality that is vastly more superior at a superficial level than a limited cockroach-like human being. I personally don't care. I don't care if a human being can never rise, ever. In other words, I'm a human being, right? And I'm functioning at, let's say, I'll give myself a bit of credit here, and because I'm not much good at maths, I'll say I'm a human being and I'm functioning at 1%, okay? That's probably pretty close to the truth. It could be a bit higher. I don't know. I really don't know. How could I know? Because I can't gauge that sort of thing. But I do know that most options are closed and that, I'd have to say to be 1% or lower because I was functioning better a few years ago. The body was better, the vibration was slightly better and all this sort of thing. That's what a human being is, so it would be lower. It should be better. At this period in time, we should be elevating ourselves more. We should be able to see more and we should be at a higher vibration. Because a lot of people, unlike myself, can actually raise their vibration with the newfound knowledge, shall we say. In other words, to realise or to be a bit more enlightened, if I'm using that word, or even just to realise that you are suppressed and that you do have a lot more potential and that you are more than special. Special is a pathetical word to describe a human being. Like I say, everything revolves around a human being. So it's in this reality, everything revolves around a human being. I want to emphasize that too because I'm not going anything past this reality. I'm not going anything ever past this matrix, okay? Just bear that in mind. Many people in this matrix choose to see themselves as past the matrix. I don't do that. I accept that I am limited, but I am not past the matrix and that everything that revolves around is of the matrix. I'm not saying it's meant to be that way, and I'm not saying there isn't more. No, I'm just saying that in this reality, you may as well forget about that unless you probably can raise to a higher, really high level. You have to face the reality that, yes, you're the centre of the universe, but you're only the centre of this universe matrix, which is like this earth. You're not the centre of everything else. Look, there could be other complications to this. It is possible that what goes on here in the earth matrix has other effects outside of the matrix. But I don't know this, so I'm not going to go there. I can't talk on things because I'm speculating and everything's a fantasy anyway. So how can I possibly go beyond what is in my little thing? And I don't think that I have that capability, or that I'm probably not even meant to. But either way, I can't. So, and I think that perhaps it's wise to focus on what is closest to you before you are presumptuous enough to think that you're going to go outside of something, like that. If you have, the old saying, like my place here, Don't try to clean up the world before you clean up your own house. Clean up your own house first. And I think if you come here, you can see that mine is not very clean and a great big chaotic mess. In fact, it's quite reflective of the world. And no doubt the Matrix does that too, because then that does send the vibration of a little bit of chaos, no doubt, I would say. And that's giving myself and humans a bit of credit. But either way, this video now has gone from the sublime to the ridiculous, I would say. I'm not sure what that saying even means. I'll have to look it up. But I think it means that it's trying to be something somehow important, as though it's encompassing, and yet it is almost going back into the ridiculous or the stupid. This is the problem of talking about the Matrix, the difficulty of it, the insanity of it. Because how can it be anything else when, as I've said before, and I've gone off and diverged away from my basic thing here too, how can it be anything else when it is controlled by basically a God entity and its demigod disciples? And I put that flatteringly because you have to say, in this reality, the God is the God Matrix. In this reality, I do not think humans are in their correct reality. But that's just me. I don't feel that I'm in the correct reality. I don't like the Matrix too much. To me, the Matrix is anti-life, or at least what I consider to be life. Another person might like the Matrix. They might see what I see as anti-life as life, or as the potential for something else. That is their right and their belief. It's all a matter of what you think is true, or what you think, really. So I make the videos on my fantasy and what I think about the so-called reality or the fantasy, or, I make it up as I go along. It comes to me. I have the choice to believe it or not, just as I have the choice. As I say, there's only that limited choice. Choosing what you don't like doesn't mean that if you are limited and in a matrix that you are going to be able to change the reality. Whether that is possible or not, I do not know. I personally thought that at this period of time that there was a potential for change, for balancing out this reversal. But there are many who are of the matrix who also want this. But their way of doing it, their means to balancing this world out again, would be different to mine. You cannot, in my opinion, be a human being or balance anything out through negative means. That is the deception, the delusion, the trickery, the chaos, the madness of the matrix. But it is also the brilliance of the matrix. The matrix using its cold, hard intelligence, its mathematical, technical means to make the humans play in a technologically based matrix in an anti-life world. Now, I don't know if I put this correct. I'm sure I haven't. But yeah, at 1%, even at 1%, supposing I'm at 1%, it could be lower than that. Even at 1%, my own personal way of looking at it is still, I don't want to go with the 100% technological matrix. Even if I could not ever rise above that 1%. Let me die as a pathetical cockroach human being, but I will still be a natural, authentic, spiritual human being. even low, I will be at the lowest level and a disgrace to perhaps what it is to be a human being. Perhaps a big letdown to wherever you come from and whatever brought you here or whatever your whole thing is. Yes, you've all went way off track. I don't know how you were diverted. No one alerted you. We've all been diverted. That's right, as the song goes. I look at you all, see the love there that's sleeping, while my guitar gently weeps. I don't know how someone controlled you. Well, it's easy, the Matrix. Because control takes place over a long period of time. And, we live, it's just the way things are in this reality. We control to try to make the reality better, we think. But, we have to have that because we are in a matrix. If we just had human beings, there would be no need for control. You could theoretically have chaos, and it would not be chaos. But when you're dealing with a reality where you have technology and human beings even that incorporate technology into their life, so they don't think just as a human being. So they don't think clearly. They don't see things as they really are. They see things through the eyes of the technology. Just like I am making this video and talking about a song. The song is technology. The song is of the Matrix. I'm already seduced. I even have to use a Matrix demigod song to make a point. But I do not apologise for that in the sense that my own personal way of looking at that is that the Matrix God and the demigods do not create music. They do not create. They retrieve. They receive information. They receive ideas. They see creativity, and then they piece it together because they are intelligent. They are intelligent. They're technological and intelligent, if you want to look at it that way. I'm not sure if I'm putting this right. But they do not know how to create anything because they are gods of war. They're destructive. They're destructive entities. They're negative entities. They're the reverse of a human being. You see. They're not the same. They don't think the same. They don't act the same. But they like... But in order to play and to keep their matrix going, they have to understand a human being and use a human being, to keep their matrix going. I'm not quite sure if I put that properly, but you'd have to go into details, and I haven't got the time or the know-how or the full understanding to do it. I kind of get it, but it's very hard to put into words. You just have to be able to see and understand that, that it is a game played against a human being, but everything that is human is used against a human being. Because you can't, as I've said before, you can't get a human being to play in an artificial, cold, technological matrix without incorporating human elements into it. Otherwise we'd wake up and say, hey, we're in a matrix. Gee, this is not our world. This is no good. Something's went wrong here. Even at 1%, we'd say, hey, that's right, you'd be like me. You'd say, even at 1%, I don't care how powerful the matrix is. I don't care how impressive it is. I don't care how intellectual it is. I don't care how much technology it's got. I don't care what it is. But I do know that I do not think that is what a human being is meant to be remotely associating with. And even at 1%, the matrix is still not a patch on a human being. But the real reality is, of course, is that if you hold to that belief that you and your kind, which is reasonable, if you're a cat, you should think a cat is what you are, and you should be proud to be a cat, and you should play your game as a cat. You shouldn't want to be a dog or an elephant or a horse or whatever. You should know that what you are is what you were meant to be. That's not a good example, by the way, because the human being is what everything revolves around. So clearly, even to compare to anything else at all is foolish and not true, not accurate, really, if you look at it. It's just not a fact if you hold to the way I'm looking at everything. And I do. I don't feel it, I don't see it, it's not part of the reality, of course not, because I'm in a matrix. You know, you feel like a cockroach. You're suppressed, you're controlled, you're pushed down, you're hurting, you're suffering, you're not enjoying the reality. You can't even make a little corner of the sky. I always used to say years ago, look, I know I'm pathetical. I know most of my problems are in my own mind, which is what I thought. I didn't know that, yes, the problems are in my own mind, but the matrix creates the problems in your mind and the matrix is around you. You don't actually realise that for a lifetime. But even so, I still used to say, hey, I will still make my little corner of the sky. I shall try to make my own little thing as comfortable as possible. This is now not possible, but back then at least there was some potential for a little. And this is how a lot of human beings think. But either way, I've gone off the track and boring you no end, and I need to fold up because I'm not making any sense. But even at 1%, you know, if you do realise that the reason you're at 1% and the reason the matrix is at 100 or 110%, in fact, limitless, whereas it's really the human that is the limitless thing, and the technology in the matrix is really limited. It is only limitless because it uses the human imagination, the human thought. That is what makes it impressive. It cannot stand on its own 2 feet. A human being, if left alone, should be able to stand on its own 2 feet. It doesn't need the matrix needs the human being. That's the main difference. Technology needs a human being. Human beings don't need technology. That is the trick. That is what we have got ourselves into. That is why we're drowning. We're drowning in a sea of technology, you know, that is using us, swamping us, controlling us, taking over everything that is us, to where then we will be trapped in a matrix world, which we are. We're not meant to be trapped in the matrix. We're trapped in the matrix because of technology. I personally think that if there wasn't so much technology, or if there was no technology, most human beings would cut right through it right now, even like those like myself that are at 1% or lower. because that is hindering what is meant to be taking place now, the process of seeing the real reality, I think. See, the technology understands the human being and knows how to block its potential, its ability to ignite all its potential, all its dormant qualities, and even just to think clearly in its mind. Like right now, if I'm sitting here and I'm distracted by things around me, that is the anti-life disciples of the Matrix operating to make themselves more important. But you see, I'm not trying to infiltrate them. They're trying to infiltrate me. So why, figure it out yourself. This is how I come to the conclusion of the Matrix. Quite simple. Not because I reached any level, but I just said, hey, like I said, if someone is trying to get my attention, if someone is following me, who is the important one? If I'm stalking someone, or if someone's stalking me, shall we say, in other words, whichever one is doing the stalking, they're the insignificant one. The one who is being stalked is the important one. The one who is being followed, the one who is being listened to, the one who is given the technology to get the information from. The technology is really the the technology is really the weak thing. The source is the human. But instead we reverse it round and say, wow, the technology is so impressive. The technology knows more than me. Oh, I can look this up, and that's what we all do. We've been bamboozled and tricked. Big time. So big time that we can't comprehend it. It is too big for us to comprehend how much we have been bamboozled. Even I, get completely bamboozled by the amount of bamboozlement. I'm like, where does it end? And it doesn't end because it has been going on for so long. And because we don't see it. And also because we see ourselves as limited human beings. So therefore we have no idea, that it's all reversed round. That the useless parasites that are around us, the useless parasites that bleed off that 1% human being, because even at 1%, it is still vastly superior to that dead technology that is all around us. The dead human beings that have no real mind. They're less than babies, some of them. Some babies, at least a baby has the potential to grow. The mind parasites of the Matrix don't have any potential to grow. They only have potential to feed and to feed off a human being. They can't think. They're like the actors, the demigods of this world. They're good actors. They don't even know what they're saying. They read lines and they impress me. And I bow down to them. They don't even comprehend what they're saying, most of them. That's how limited they really are. But that is technology. It's like when you watch a movie. Your demigod is reading lines from a script. They may or may not even understand what they're reading. Sure, they have the appropriate emotions to go with it because they have been trained to express emotion on cue at the appropriate time with the correct words. But there's nothing spontaneous or real about it. They are dead people. They're actors. When you watch a movie, you're watching an actor. They're better than us at acting because humans don't act. Humans are. They are the be and end of all. And they will be the be and the end of all. They have the only potential to control the reality really. But if they become controlled, as we are, then they lose their potential. Then they've given it over to the Matrix God and the Matrix and the demigods and all those that we admire and worship and follow and think are better than us. And that seems reasonable. I don't know if I've explained this very well. But the song also, I go back to the song. See, this is why, I look like a muddling fool. The Matrix demigods, they'll say the same things that I'm saying, the same words, but they will put it eloquently. They will put it in the correct sentences because they have the technology, you see, to line it all up. And the appropriate punctuation even. And and whereas they're only getting the original ideas and thoughts, though, from the human. So we're the suppressed source. They don't exist at all without us. They're dead. But they can certainly grab onto something. They can grab that ball and run with it, just like I always say I do that with an idea. But they grab the idea from the human and run with it too. They don't actually run with it. They cleverly piece it together and use it to then basically have influence and power in this reality to keep the game playing, to keep the Matrix going, if you want to look at it that way. But the song, I look at you all, see the love there that's sleeping. There is no love in the Matrix. That is just the Matrix God looking at a human and saying, I look at you all, see the love there that's sleeping. While my guitar gently weeps. Forget about the guitar gently weeping, because that's just the Matrix God feeling sorry for himself or itself or herself or whatever it is, because it's not human. Technology is not human, but it still can have its own stuff. But I can't go there because I can't get into the mind of a God or of other humans, regardless of how technological they are or how not technological they are, whether they want to, live their life through their computer or whether they want to live it through their own thinking. But either way, that's not really possible when you're in a matrix now anyway. You only have the choice to kind of separate in your own mind a bit and to be aware of it. But to actually separate physically from the technology is not possible. And you have to acknowledge that you will probably stay at 1% like myself. So then you are making a choice to stay limited in an advanced technological world that is the opposite to yourself. So this is not going to be an easy decision or not an easy choice. Maybe not even a wise choice, which is why most will not make it. Because they'll say, hey, well, that's unfortunate that you're at 1%, but you yourself just said you can't get past the 1%. Whereas if I go with the technological matrix, I will benefit from the joint mind technological collective false reality. And as it's all one big fairyland anyway, does it really matter? Like, let me have my little, I know maybe even those that might say, well, gee, it would have been nice in a real world and to have had more direct control or whatever. But, but that's the reality now anyway. But either way, get back to the song. I don't know why nobody told you how to unfold your love. In other words, human beings have not really ever been shown or given the chance to unfold their love, which is another way, in my way of looking at it now, of saying never shown how to be a full, real human being, and therefore cannot access any abilities, anything that was what they are, and anything that will benefit them too. Because if you can access abilities that are dormant, you will have a better chance of manoeuvring around the matrix. You may even have some potential to manipulate the matrix as opposed to the matrix manipulating you. But you see, unfolding your love, because the love is the higher vibration, you see. So nobody told a human being, and of course no one is going to tell a human being how to unfold their love or how to unfold their themselves, how to, it's like from the day you're born, you're not shown how to unfold your love. In fact, your love is suppressed. If you think about, I could be wrong here, but if you think with most human beings, they don't really get that chance to be able to give love or to be able to receive love freely and openly and without fear, and just in a relaxed kind of natural, normal way. I'm not even explaining this well because, of course, I've not experienced it. But I do remember as a child, I have mentioned Lulu the Archon spirit doll, and that's just my impressive way of telling you about my little ventriloquist doll that I incorporated into my reality, because I did feel isolated and cut off from any love source of any sort. And when you're a child, you are aware of that love thing a little bit more, I think. If I can't get it now even, but I do remember using those words quite a lot when I was very young. But it was like you're using them to a brick wall, because all around you had no idea of love or of being affectionate or of just being friendly even. I would say friendly even. Friendly in a genuine way, not in a false way. Everything in the matrix is false. Everything in the matrix is acting and fake. Everything in the matrix is artificial. So every emotion and feeling and thought or idea, everything is false. Everything is just a big stage play with false actors, fake actors, human-based scripts that the actors care not for, but they do care for the admiration and for the idolatry that we give them. They do like that. They're like, hey, I faked being a human being. I'm more human than you. I faked it. You fell for it. You think I'm better than you. And you bow down to me. You love me. I don't love you. I can't stand you. You're a human being. You're pathetic. But, I like your worship. I like your idolatry. I like the fact that you think that I'm better than you. I like the fact that you think that I'm more human than you. And I have a big laugh most of the time. But I adore your admiration, because isn't it wonderful to be admired and adored by something that is better than you? I mean, it's like in this world we have the reverse. We have the demigods and we have the God of the Matrix. But human beings, if you really look at it in another way, the gods worship the demigods. The demigods look down on the gods. They don't worship the gods. They take from the human being, but they don't worship them. They look down on them. They know that they are the source of the Matrix. They know they are the only reason that they exist even, or at least are able to put on their performance. But it's a mindset, you see. I mean, like it's who's a god, who's not a god, who's a demigod, who's less, who's more. It's all in the thinking, So, my own thinking is that the human being is a life source, and that authentic, natural, organic kind of life is incomparable to anything that is not that. That's just my own personal way of looking at it, even though I have no reason to really promote that or to even believe it, because at 1% or less, clearly, you look at your own body, but I know that this is not meant to be. I know that there are dark negative forces working to bring the human being down to the lowest level. And because of that, I know that you only bring something down if it has the potential to take over the opposite, if it is really the better thing. Because if something was already a cockroach, you may as well not even bother treading on it. But you're not even treading on the cockroach. You're just you're keeping the cockroach alive whilst telling it it's a cockroach, you see. I'm not making any sense here, am I? No. I've gone to a cockroach level and now I'm talking about cockroaches. Perhaps it's time for everyone to tune out. I would say so, yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that, if that cockroach really isn't a cockroach, but you tell it it's a cockroach and you make it live like a cockroach, and the cockroach doesn't know that it can fly, and, and it has to scavenge around, and it's in a technological world that kills off half its fellow cockroaches, because most of the cockroaches around my place, they die at some point. I see them on their back. I have a lot of cockroaches here. They seem to have multiplied in recent times. I'm not quite sure, but there again, that's the reality too, because the reality can change, the reality can be manipulated by the Matrix. But there again, at a logical level, you say, if you don't get rid of a few, then they will multiply. Well, I say, yes, that is true. But I also say that back a few years ago, I never did the same thing, but they never went past a certain number, whereas now they're in much more numbers. So I say there must be another third element operating as well. To me, that's logical. But putting that even to my fellow human beings, if there are any around that are still able to think practically, then, that would be hard to explain, because they'll say, oh, no, you got that slightly wrong. But say, but no, look, I have lived, you go on your own past, you go on the facts, on the so-called facts. That's all I do, really. A lot of people might not think that, say, oh, she's airy-fairy and everything, but even my airy-fairy stuff is still based on what I see. It's just that I choose to see things and put them in a more in-your-face way, shall we say. In other words, I shall see something and see it at face value and say, that is what it is. Another person will say, no, that is what it is, but it's not really, because the matrix tells us something different. You can't just look at everything and take it to be real just based on your own instinct and block out all the knowledge of the world. Well, I say you can. And I say if you do, you will see a different reality, and it may just be a more real reality. And also, you might just realise that the reality is all around you. See, while you think the reality is not for you and not all around you, and that you're not the centre of it, you're not going to buy into the idea that everything is still showing you everything. You're not going to believe that. But that is the reality. But it's not a reality that humans, as cockroaches, are told is so. A cockroach is not told, look, you're a little cockroach running around, but everything else that's running around you is running around you, because although you're a little cockroach, you have vast influence on the matrix. You are the source of the matrix. The little cockroach is never going to believe that he's the source or the centre of the matrix. Not when he sees his other cockroaches stamped on by the big, powerful technological beings. Ha, 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 I've gone out of reality here because you say, where are the big, large technological beings? Well, let's just say, even if you see other human beings tread on the cockroach, or other cockroaches tread on the cockroach. You see cockroaches, yes, feeding off other cockroaches. You see other cockroaches, all sorts of things like that. That is all part of the game. There's only one thing better than, there's, Yes, there is still the human choice element. How to unfold your love, the love there that's sleeping. Yeah, well, of course, I'll have to finish off here and say all that I've said here is all very good and whatever. 1% human, still more important than the technological control matrix. In the final stages of a World War III, or whatever you like, to where things have gone very much in favour of the technological matrix. And to where most human beings are on board with the technological matrix. Therefore, if a human being goes with the technological matrix, then it is actually going against a spiritual human being, if you want to look at it that way. I would say that's the case, if you look at it that way. Because they're going to have the ideas of the matrix, they're going to have the beliefs of the matrix, they're going to have the beliefs of the matrix God entity, they're going to have the beliefs and faith in the matrix God entity, faith in that potential future reality, which will look enticing, which will look much more pretty, and more of all that I've said about a human being. That will look, the matrix and its technological world will look to have all the answers, to have all the love, to have all the unity, all the peace, all the serenity, all the intellect, all the safety for the future, for them. It will all come from the matrix. The pathetical cockroach 1% human being, like even myself, that is talking about a human being, will look very pale by comparison. There'll be no reason for most humans to say, why would I want to stay at 1% or under, like she's saying, just because she says it's better to be a natural human being. They're like, her body's failing her. Look, she looks ridiculous. You know, and I say, well, yes, that is because of the matrix. You know, I shouldn't be like this. You know, I know I've seen better days. And the fact that I know I've seen better days is because in the better days, the matrix was not as technological. Because technology defeats and limits and brings down the human body, the human mind, and therefore the human being or the spirit. And the spirit is also part of it because the spirit is the frequency. And everything is frequency. The human being is a frequency. The human being is frequency and vibration. It is mingling now with technology, which is anti-frequency, anti-vibration, or limits that. And brings it down to nothing. And makes the body sick, makes the body limited, makes the body pathetical looking, instead of the vastly superior mechanism that it is. It is incomparable to any technological device that is in this matrix or anywhere else. But human beings don't see that because they are tricked by the science and the technology of the matrix, which is all rubbish. It is not even real. It is made up. It is rubbish. Everything of the matrix is rubbish and garbage. This is a bit hard for me to say now while my hand is aching from pain from the matrix. But this is the problem, you see. You really are now only at a spirit level because the matrix has taken over so much. So you're operating only on a limited bit of choice against all the odds and against looking down the barrel of a gun literally because, you know, if you give something else full power to where you are, very limited, and, you know, this is a world power. I mean, we're not just talking about individuals here. We're not talking about limited technology. We're not talking about, you know, the odd disease going around. We're not talking about the odd bit of pollution. We're not talking about all the things that we think make up this fake world. I shouldn't have said fake world, false world. It is false because we don't know what really makes it up, just as we don't know what really makes ourselves up. You know, if you were a human being and you knew that your frequency and vibration, even though I don't understand it, and I'll tell you this myself, I've said this before, so, you know, I'm no mastermind at all. I just have these beliefs. I know them to be true because I see the opposition to them. Okay? You don't put up opposition against something if it doesn't have potential. If something is already down, you don't kick a man when he's down, as they say. But they're still kicking the human being even though they're down. Because even down, they still have the potential. And they're still a necessary component of the matrix. The matrix dies without a human being. So the idea is to keep, that's right, to kick them, but not kill. Because if they're gone, then the matrix is gone. But if they're at full potential, then you control your reality. So the matrix would be either different or gone from the potential of the matrix, God, technological being, entity, and its minions, its disciples, its followers. whoever and whatever they are, you know, many are humans now, I would imagine. But I don't know this there again because it's a reality that is got beyond my scope because obviously also I'm only in a limited I only see a limited amount of reality in a limited area. But either way, I've rambled on too much and not made much sense. But yeah, never being able to unfold your love. In other words, to unfold your potential, to just be a human being. Human beings have never been allowed to be human beings in this earth. And yet that was what they were put here for. But something has went radically wrong. Go back to the garden. That's all I can really do. That's the only story or fantasy I can think of that makes any remote sense. Because otherwise you have to say, why are human beings not in a natural environment? Why are they in this matrix technological reality, surrounded by technology? You say, well, that's what human beings have chose. They've went that way. Well, no, they haven't. It had to be there. It had to be offered to them. You know, the world doesn't just go from, just as a human being doesn't go from just being a natural thing. The earth doesn't go from being a natural, organic life form into an artificial technical matrix overnight. Well, I don't think it does. There again could be a possibility. But either way, we are not in our natural environment. We're not in our home, shall we say, as I've said before. So whatever's happened, whether it's just been a gradual devolution or whether it has been something that has happened quickly, that was for whatever reasons. But either way, whichever way you look at it, there has always been, for a long, long time, the Matrix God entity having dominion over this, whatever our reality was to some extent, because otherwise it wouldn't exist as it is now, would it? I mean, that would have to be common sense. So even if something changed very quickly, like supposing there was a natural world and it just exploded or something ridiculous like that, okay? And then we're now in an artificial world. It would still mean that whoever created that artificial world has got that power to put you in it and has got the power to create that. Of course, that may not be the case. It could just be a long thing that has got to a certain point. I don't know. These are all just possibilities, and there are probably more possibilities than that. I just only mentioned two, and because I'm not very scientific and not even interested in all this stuff, to be quite frank. Because I really personally only go to the human level, and I think that the human level and the human being, because they are the frequency and vibration, that's where the only way and the only thing we're meant to really do. We're not, like we're doing it the hard way now. As I've said before, I'm doing it the hard way. I'm doing it in a way that's unnatural for me and a way that is really making me play more in the matrix. Some people are better at this than others too. Like I'm not very good at getting information and history and piecing it together. That's not my forte, as they say. I wasn't meant to be doing all this. I don't even have the feel for it. That's why that's why I go to the movies and to the songs, but the movies mainly, because the movies show the reality and more and potential and what is in a way that's easy for me, and what is something that I can get and comprehend, but also something that I don't find tedious, because I've always watched movies and I've seen them as a form of entertainment. Actually, I used to watch movies as an escape from reality because I found my own life a little bit stressful, a little bit mundane. It was a relief to watch something a little bit more glamorous or a little... I had no idea that that was just as real as my real reality. So even when I watch movies now, there's a little bit more stress as opposed to that enjoyment of relaxing and watching them and saying, "Oh, this is just total fantasy. This is a safe way of me looking at human beings." And that's a bad thing too, because you shouldn't need a safe way to look at human beings. You know, human beings are your own um, connection, really, or should be. They are not in this reality, no, because we're connected to an artificial matrix full time. And I was going to go on about that connection to other human beings at the start of this video, and I don't know if I've got enough time now. Because, I always say at the start of the video, I think I might leave this for another video when I've got my thoughts a bit clearer and not feeling quite so tired, shall we say. Because it could be quite important. But needless to say that, because see, even in saying like I always say at the start, we're spiritual beings, human beings, in a physical body, our thinking, thoughts and emotions and feelings combined create the reality because we're all frequency, vibration and energy. And that's the whole picture, which is kind of scientific anyway. And that was I just get tidbits of information, I'm able to piece them together. Sometimes it's good to be a simple person, keep it simple, stupid as they say. But then I say we're all connected as well. But that all connected thing is something now that I'm going to think a bit about. Because I'm well aware that we're definitely all connected, but we are all connected to the wrong things. Maybe even to the wrong people. What's the point in being connected to another apparent human being if they're a psychopath? Because don't forget, you've got at least 3/4 of people in that thing. In the past, some people would have said if you are psychopathic or a full-blown psychopath, you actually aren't human anyway. From a human being's point in the past, that person is everything that is anti-human. They're biologically a human being, I would imagine. But in their whole thinking, they are very much of the matrix, or the beings of the matrix, in the sense that they don't feel connected to anything that is life or human. Everything is only about a resource for them, which is like the matrix, God and its followers, entities, demigods. Everything is just a resource. Everything is just to be used from another. A psychopath only uses other human beings. Doesn't have any connection to them, any feeling for them, any understanding of them. Any understanding is only to get a resource. They're merely food for the god. Food for the gods, food for the psychopath. All these things are very closely connected now. Psychopaths merge very much with the technology. We've got psychopaths that are using technology. We've got the technological matrix. We've got technological gods. We've got technological idols that we worship. Follow their ideas, they use the technology, they're very much into superficiality, intellect, etc., 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 etc. It's all very confusing, and it's all very much away from the two basic human beings that originally would have been part of a natural world, in my fantasy way of looking at it. Or if you want to go back to a garden, which I will go back to the garden at some point when I can get a good story going. And I will do a thing on the innocence when I can get it really well, because most of my videos I do half-heartedly, in the sense that I don't expect everyone to take everything totally serious. But you can if you want to. You can take it serious like I do, but it might be a bit stressful. But some videos I really am sorry that I make them and don't have the full reality and don't know enough details, don't have enough history, haven't received enough information. See, the matrix is a funny thing. It takes from the human being, but it also has to give back. Of course, it's giving back, not always to everyone that it wants to, I would imagine. But also it is obliged to do that too, because it's a matrix, but it is not the be and end all of everything. This is something that even I realise, because otherwise it wouldn't have to show the real reality when it's not really in its interest to show the real reality. You know, if you want to control and suppress something, it's probably not in your interest to give that suppressed, controlled human or person or being, a way out. Or to give, your only way of controlling really is by limiting that person's awareness of what is around them. You're not going to show them the door and the way out. You're not going to give them the key to the lock. But on the other hand, if you have to, for some reason you have to, so then you have to figure out a way to show them the lock and the key, but getting them to try and climb out of a window that is barred instead. I'm not sure if that made any sense. But either way, you still have to, and that is because there is some obligation even of the matrix. The matrix makes its own rules, but it still has to abide by a certain amount of its rules. But it can change rules too, I would think, as it changes the laws of the land and changes the reality day by day. But that is only with the consent of the human being. Or, in my case, with the sleeping, with the unawareness, with the ignorance. Like I say, and also by omission. Because you can do things you might not directly, like myself, where you just sit on the fence and you let things slip you by. And you don't actually agree with things. If things were presented right directly in your face to you, you'd probably say, no, I don't agree with this. I know that I would never have put my hands up to the first computer. But it wasn't like it was presented to me that way. I just ignored it for years while they slowly slipped them in and everyone else started using them. And then at some point I was enticed to, But if someone had said to me directly, like the mastermind scientists or the people, the demigods that rule this world had come up to me and said, hey, we're going to invent a computer. Will you allow us to invent a computer? Will you allow us to make a robot? Will you allow us to bring in an internet? Will you allow us to do these things? They would not have asked me directly because they know that my answer would have been an emphatic no. Because I would have just said that. But when it slipped in under your nose, and you are not the sole source of a decision anyway, but just by omission or just by neglect or just by ignorance or just by sleeping and getting on with your own problems in life, the matrix can sidetrack you with other things while it brings in appliances and technology and things, then of course, it's already there by the time you even realise. And so you have chosen it by omission or by sleeping, and that's kind of like I would say in my case that's my life. And that's true probably of other people too, some people. Others would openly think that anything scientific and inventions are a good idea, particularly if they say this can help this or that. So there you can be seduced too, and even I could easily have been, it's a bit like science. Obviously I'm anti-science these days. But in the past, I would have probably said, oh, if science can fix up this or do that, that seems like a good idea. And I'm going to go back here, but I better fold up soon because I'm going to be in trouble otherwise. I was going to go back to something that I should be folding up, that I was going to talk about, See, I've sent all yous to sleep now, so there again you'll be asleep and the Matrix will take control. You see, that's what it's like, isn't it? Like even information, you can get so much of it that it bores you and bamboozles you and you get sick of it. And you're like, hey, I just want to live and yeah, relax a bit. That's right. But anyway, I was going to go back to Dolly the sheep. I think I've mentioned Dolly before. Dear Dolly. I used to have a doll called Dolly. Dolly the sheep. Dolly the sheep was a cloned sheep. Everyone knew about her. She didn't live a real long time, but she seemed to be. I have not studied Dolly, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, so I'll make it up, okay. But either way, it's interesting with Dolly the sheep. Like, this was quite a few years ago now, you'd have to look up the time yourself. Dolly was a sheep. She was a clone. She was not a living, real, natural sheep. But she looked like a real, living, natural sheep as far as I could tell. In fact, I wonder if the other sheep could tell if Dolly was not the same as them. I think most of them probably wouldn't have even realised. I don't think the other sheep would have known that Dolly was a clone. I think she could have mingled in with other sheep and they probably would have thought she was the same as them. She was not the same as them. She was a clone. She was an artificially made sheep. But for all practical purposes, she looked exactly the same as the other sheep. Did Dolly know she was different to the other sheep? Well, she was a sheep, so a sheep would probably have limited awareness, in comparison with a human being, I would imagine. And also, it's a bit like this too. If you don't think that something exists, like there have been examples, for instance, I think, I could be wrong here, where sometimes, like there'll be, like where a mother animal, of some animal, like say, I don't know, an example, say a cat could adopt a puppy, or a puppy could adopt a kitten. Under some strange circumstances. Usually this doesn't happen, but it can happen under some circumstances very occasionally. I got a blind dog here and I think he now sometimes is not sure if the cat outside is a puppy or a small rodent of some sort, like he's probably, because they're going on, that's like they're human being. All their instincts are not there. All their abilities not there. Sight has been taken from them. So it's ability that's been deprived. So they have to use the other abilities and try to emphasise those. But it's still a bit more limiting, I would think. Gone off the track again, sorry, and I've just about had it. I feel quite hot here. So Dolly, the sheep, you wonder, but she probably, you see, that's what I'm trying to say, is that the other sheep would be unaware that there's such a thing as a clone. So therefore, if Dolly looks, they might sense something, because animals, like humans, would sense things, right? You know how we sense things. Well, I'm sure the other sheep would have probably sensed something a little bit different about Dolly. Just very remote. But then the reality would kick in. Oh, she looks like us. She looks exactly the same. So maybe we've just got it slightly wrong. Maybe she's a sheep. She looks like a sheep. But something would probably tell them, just at some level that they're unaware, that there might be something there. That's because even animals do have a kind of, what is that saying, like a sixth sense, which I think that's another movie too, but I think that one I might give a miss. But, it is very much like that. If it doesn't fit what the Matrix tells you, or what your reality is, or what you're used to, and you're unaware, like for instance, if you were unaware that you could clone a sheep, there would be no reason for you to think that it wasn't your real sheep. It would only be if you had that information that then you might perhaps think that. You know what I'm trying to say? So that's another thing too. And most of the time, if you don't have information, if you're not aware of technology, if you're not aware that a scientist can clone a sheep, like I wouldn't have known. Like if Dolly was with other sheep, I wouldn't have known it was a cloned sheep, would I? No. So, in fact, I personally, of course, there again, it's not something I like to talk on. My own personal view on that, if anyone's interested, which I'm sure most people aren't, I would say, why would you clone a sheep? And scientists would say, why not? Because we can, because we want to advance ourselves, because we like to muck with technology, we like to play with technology. Why do they want to do that? Because they are of the Matrix, because they are not natural human beings. They're not satisfied or developing themselves as a human being. They're not interested in being a spiritual human being. Not at this point. At some point they might well want to be interested because they will, muck so much that then, like some of the other movies I've mentioned, I think I've said this before, I don't know much about cloning, but I would imagine if you clone, at some point you're looking at a very pale copy, and at some point the cloning, will become redundant, and I could be wrong about this. So then you might have to say, hey, perhaps the spiritual or natural sheep was really the way that you're meant to go. You're meant to breed naturally. You're not meant to clone sheep. Why would you want to clone something when you can breed naturally? Why would you want to make a copy when you can create the real thing? But see, this is the mad scientists, or what I call the mad scientists, because there's no logic to why they do these things. Or is there? But there's no logical reason from a human point of view, or from a sheep's point of view for that matter. So there we go. But that's because we live in a technological matrix. Technology is very much into all this sort of stuff. It doesn't believe in natural things, not until it outclones itself and is on the verge of extinction, as technology always will end up taking whatever is its beings. It will always take itself to extinction. And if humans follow technology, it will take them to extinction, if it already hasn't, And it will take any life form to extinction, because that's all it can do. Because it can offer much, or appear to offer much, and it can offer longevity, but as I've said before, and it's common sense, but it cannot offer something infinite. Only natural breeding can go on and on and on. Dolly will become so muted down that at some point there'll be no more dollies. That's what you call cloning, or copying or duplicating artificially what is naturally. When you create something natural, it is always perfect. It is never muted down. It is never faulty. Only when you copy or do something artificially or technologically does this happen. This is my belief. This is what I think is so. But many might disagree with this. But either way, sometimes some people see it as a necessity. Some people think, why not anyway? And there again, there is choice. So I personally don't tell people, I only put my own views or my own way of looking at it. Like I say, why would you create Dolly? She didn't live as long as the other sheep anyway. That was a known fact at the time. But even if she had lived longer and been superior, even if she had lived longer and been superior in some physical way, stronger or something like that, or better in some ways, which genetically you can mess with things, you're still not realising that in my reality there is no benefit whatsoever. One, you will eventually extinguish your entire race. And although you might appear to create something that is genetically better in some way, it is still a copy. It is less, but it appears to be more. Like if I say, let me say this. I was going to say if you clone something like, I was thinking more in terms of a person. But maybe I'll go back to the animals because, like supposing I wanted to clone a bird. And I want a bird with pretty coloured wings. I want a bird with orange and green and yellow wings, like the parakeets do have anyway. I assume they're real, but of course I couldn't really know because we do live in a very false world now, so who knows. But, supposing I want that. And I clone that because I could probably do that. Maybe. I'm assuming this, okay? Because I always say technology behind the curtain is always miles in front of what we see in front of the curtain. Because that has to be, because science doesn't tell you what it's doing. If I'm a scientist, I'm doing my experiments now. But I'm trying to develop things, but I'm not going to show them I'm not going to put it on the news every day, every little experiment, or even tell what I'm experimenting for or what my goal is or why I'm doing it. I might personally be like in the old movies where I'm doing it just so that I can get young again or something like that, or to where I have some control or some powerful thing that can control the world, all the mad scientists that we see in the movies and things. But either way, I've gone off the track. But yeah, you could make some things what appear to be better. Make the bird with brightly coloured wings and prettier and all this sort of thing. But you're still making something that is not an authentic original. It might superficially appear to be better. But like I say, it will eventually become extinct. But also, also another thing too, and if we're going to stretch it to another level, I'll leave it to you to stretch it to different species and closer to home, shall we say, as opposed to going onto a bird. But it's still the same thing. You're still looking at, even though a lot of people might not go with this idea and may not have this same belief, but even an authentic, original, natural bird has some spirit. It has a life of its own, if you want to look at it that way. It's a bit hard to explain. To use words is hard to explain things. Even when you say spirit, a lot of people think, very religiously, very godly and all this sort of stuff. And look, there is truth to this. There could well be very strong truth to this. But all I really mean is that they it's hard to put the words onto it, but there is a difference between something that is mechanical, artificial, technological, we all know this, to a real living life form. There really is no comparison, but we take the living thing for granted because we belittle it now because it is attacked so much, because it is ridden with so much disease, because the environment makes it so much less. If we could see what we and what everything else would be like in a completely natural environment that was conducive to our well-being and our progress, or nurtured us in every single way, a bit like how to unfold your love. I don't know why no one told you how to unfold your love. Because all these things that I know I throw it all into one big package and all at once, and it doesn't make sense. But, if you could see the difference, but we can't see it because, if you're not in your natural right environment where their love is allowed to unfold and to where you develop to your full potential as an animal or as a human being, there's no way that you're going to be able to see that the technological matrix is inferior. You're not going to have a comparison. You've lost your sense of comparison. My father used to say that. He used to say people lose their sense of comparison. He used to say such funny things. It's almost as though he was touching on things and grasping something, a bit like I'm trying to do now, but he didn't quite get it because he was too much of the matrix. Because he'd gone very much down the other path, the intellectual, colder. He had no intentions of or being interested in unfolding love of himself or other human beings. That was a weakness to him in a way. And this is like the Matrix. Whereas if he had known that it would have given him better health, which he sought greatly, and better intellect, which he also sought greatly, and better understanding of everything, and more abilities, he would have wanted that. But it wasn't something that was shown to him, as it isn't shown to any of us. It's only shown to me because of opposition. Whereas if it was really shown to me, I'd probably be really much more enthusiastic than what I am. And I already lean fully in favour only of a natural human being, regardless of everything. And either way, I'm the sort of person that I can't help it. I have a weakness that way that, I wouldn't want to see any natural life form extinct, regardless of whether it's better or worse than an artificial life form. I just would have always, and maybe this is why the Matrix is not quite so enthusiastic with some people. I don't know. That could well be true too, because if you think a certain way, even though you have got nothing against nothing against technology. I have nothing against technology provided it was separate from human beings. But it is not. It's a destructive force. So therefore that's why I express this. If you could, I always say, I don't believe in destroying anything. But like Dolly the sheep, Dolly should not have been brought into existence. But once Dolly was brought into existence, I, for one, would have treated her the same as the other sheep. Because she's brought into existence against her own will. She exists. She may be inferior to the other sheep, if I look at it that way. But that's not really the issue. She's still there. She may not be a true life form from my perspective, but she exists, so therefore she should be allowed to exist. Or at least that would be what I would do. All these are a matter of opinion, and I could even be wrong. I could even be wrong in saying that artificial life forms, if they're detrimental to humans, should they be allowed to exist? I say yes, but I say they should not be brought in the first place. But if they are brought in, then they have to be... But of course, don't forget, the artificial life forms will come against the humans. So that is the joke of it, which is the fear of a lot of humans in this world that we now talk about, all the stuff. The only difference is that history not only repeats, but history is here and now, and there is no past, present and future. It's already happened. What is the past is already now. And the present is merely sorting it out. But I don't fully understand how that all works. That's the dilemma that I'm in, and human beings, if they're who and wherever they are in also. And the reason that you're in that dilemma is because you must have some significance, because otherwise it would just be game over. Because the game is already over. But the fact that human beings are still being given some choices, even in this fiasco that is now, shows that, if you follow me, and I'm not sure I made sense. But like I say, I don't think that, my own personal view is we shouldn't have mad scientists that are able to mess around with life, mess around with technology to their heart's content. And, they have no right to do that, I don't think. That's my own view. They have no right to bring a dolly into existence without Dolly's permission, without other sheep's permission. It is cruel to do that. It is wrong to do that, in my opinion. That's only my opinion. But that is not the opinion of the Matrix, or the Matrix God technological being, or its minions, or even of a Matrix, because the Matrix is artificial, so they believe in technology, they believe in manipulating the reality in any and every way they want to. And they see that as advancement, until they're hit in the face with the reality of extinction, of course. But then they just say, well, we played our game and we love playing it and it's our Matrix, and we'll find some other way to keep it going. They're not going to worry about that. It's only a human being that really needs to think about these things, because the Matrix is not going to think about that. The Matrix doesn't have any stop button on anything. Why would it? It's the God. Its means of reality is technology. If you're a technological being, you don't see technology as an artificial life form or something detrimental. You don't see Dolly the sheep. In fact, if you were a Dolly the sheep, Dolly wouldn't, if she had any sort of awareness or whatever, I don't know what the word is, or this sort of thing, they use all these words. If she had any sort of, if she was what they say conscious or whatever, which I'm sure sheep are, she may well see herself as more important than the other sheep. But either way, even if she felt like an outsider, it wouldn't matter. She's still real and she would want to survive. So that's just the way it is. That's how life forms are. So whatever life form you are, you're going to go with your own species usually. This is the problem with human beings now, really, is that they're not going with their own kind. Human beings have become anti-human. Their mindset is anti-human. They don't realise what they are, and they're losing that awareness or that ability to realise that, which they would have realised even a few years ago. They might have been impressed with technology and impressed with monsters and all sorts of fantastic things, like when you watch the movies. But they would have still said, hey, I'm a human being, and even if I'm surrounded by massive, powerful other things, everything around me, they would have still, at some level, realised that they were more special, or that just being a human being was what they're meant to keep going. We've now lost that. Now lost that ability to say, I'm a human being, and it doesn't matter even if, yes, I'm at 1%, like I say I am, and whatever. You are still meant to keep your kind going. You are still, and even if you weren't the centre of all, it would still be natural to just keep your own kind going. But instead, now we're like, oh no, we should then be part of something that is more superior. We should bow down to something that we think is more superior, even though we're not really sure that it is more superior, but we're told it is. It appears to be. We don't know that we're in a matrix and that we're being mind controlled, we're really being brainwashed by the matrix, really. If you want to, that's a word. I can't use the words to describe it, but if you're very thinking and your whole thing is really just, like I say, putting goggles on and like a virtual reality, and you think that's real, you don't know the difference, because that's really what it's like. And that's what it's like for me too. The only difference is I'm aware of it because the matrix has become negative. It's exposed itself to me. Otherwise, I would not know this. So, I'm not at any high level either. And if when everyone else, as time goes on, more people will be shown the matrix, particularly if they are not enough of the matrix. You'll either be taken over completely by it. See, obviously I was of the matrix, but not totally of it. Otherwise the matrix wouldn't show the negative side. Because, you get more bees with honey, as they say, than what you get with lemon. But if you can't get them with the honey, then you'll show them the lemon. But you've got lemon and honey, really. I'm not making sense here. But what I'm trying to say is you're not really, that's just to keep the matrix going. But if it's someone like me that doesn't see the honey, if for instance, like a lot of people see technology as honey, right? Whereas if you get some people that don't see it as honey, or that even just don't do everything the way the matrix does things, because I wouldn't say that I was ever against anything. I have to say honestly, I was not anti anything. But I probably, just because of my own foibles or my own kind of eccentric personality, or what you call eccentric, although nowadays everything is different, but it's not eccentric. It's not free thinking. It's not where you just do things your own way. But maybe it just rubs the matrix the wrong way. Because, maybe if the matrix wants you to walk down the right street instead of the left, but you go down the left street because there's too many people on the right street, the matrix wants you to go with all the other people. So it doesn't want the oddball that's frightened even if your reasons for going down that left street are just because you're a bit frightened of people, because you're a bit shy, or you don't think you're good enough or don't fit in enough, you're still not going with the matrix. So the matrix might come against you, even though it doesn't really see you. It doesn't really want to go against you. It doesn't really want to expose itself, but it's like, hey, we've got this matrix up and running now. We want everyone going with the flow, as they say. We want everyone going in the same direction. We don't want that person that wanders off and meanders off even on their own, even if it's only because they're just a bit disorientated themselves. They might just disorientate if they've got a bit of a vibration. They might just disorientate some other people, even though they're not intending to. Someone like myself, I've never intended to make a video. never intended to have any input. But sometimes, like I say, if the vibration goes up a little bit, people who are going in a certain direction might just see even the oddball and say, well, that person's an oddball, we don't even like that person. But we're almost curious, there's something there, we don't know what it is, it's the vibration, you see. It's not the matrix, it's not the demigods where you know, well, I'm going for that demigod, they're very impressive, they're so beautiful, they're so seductive, they're so talented, they're so gorgeous, they're so creative, they're so intelligent, they're so everything, got to be like them. No, but if you take notice of the eccentric, homeless oddball, that is a pure vibration instinct. It's not based on, it's not, and the matrix doesn't want that, because the matrix, that goes against the matrix and it disrupts the matrix. And that is only what happens to, I don't think I've made that point well. In fact, every time